All right. Today I want to talk about the importance of calling during these turkey hunts. Obviously, that is a very important thing. It's extremely important. But I will say this, thankfully, for a lot of us that, we don't always sound that great, there is a little bit of hope there. You don't have to sound that great to call in a bird. Now, don't get me wrong, you want to at least sound like a turkey. It is very important that you at least kind of at least sound like a turkey. I think we can all agree with that. But you don't have to be like a world champion caller to call in a bird. That's the kind of part of the aspect I want to talk about today, and the fact that, and a lot of times, and don't get me wrong, calling is very important. But I do believe woodsmanship and just knowing how these turkeys behave, and this is my opinion now, but that will kill a lot more birds than just being a good caller. Now, if you're a good caller and you got that as well, you're gonna be very successful out in the turkey woods. But kind of what I want to go on about is a couple little calling tips. And how often do we go out in the woods and we hear other hunters and they're over here going just as loud as they can, just tearing down the woods? How often do we hear that? But then take that and imagine how often do we actually hear the actual hens making that kind of noise, being that loud? Now, don't get me wrong, they will get that loud, and they do. But how often do you actually hear it? Most of the time, they're not going to be calling like that. I can guarantee you, I've only a handful of times heard them do that, and it's mostly when they got upset. It's mostly when I've made them upset, and I'm trying to get them to come to me to pull the gobbler in. But it's just, you don't usually hear hens making that kind of racket. And my tip here is to try to sound as real as possible. Try doing something more like just little stuff like that. You can raise the volume up a little bit. You ain't got to tear down the woods like something crazy back there. And I promise you, I've gotten more of them gobbling at me from when I've been quieter like that. When I've just gone along, sound like a hen doing her thing, and just one that's looking but not like necessarily going crazy. I've got more gobblers come into me doing softer calling like that than I have just being as loud as I can, cutting, yelping. And don't get me wrong, there are places for that, and I have had also the experience where I had to use that. Otherwise, the gobbler wasn't going to come in. And I've probably already said this in one of my previous videos, where I actually started quieting it down a little bit, and he'd start walking off. Then I'd have to pick up the volume, and then he'd come back in closer. So there are situations where you have to do that. It's kind of like trying to read that bird, trying to find out what he wants. But a lot of the times, for me personally, and definitely since I hunt a lot of public land, that really, really loud cutting, yelping, I mean, it works with some of them, but with a lot of them, definitely some of the more pressured birds, I would say, just some lighter calls, just small cuts like that, little yelps, clucks and purrs. Just little soft stuff like that. A lot of times that'll bring them in where just tearing up the woods just ain't cutting it. So I encourage y'all to try this tactic. You can do a lot of these calls same way on a slate call. Slate call is really good for really quiet, soft calls. I'll go ahead and say that. A box, you can do it on box too. To me, just me, I have a hard time getting a little quieter on a box. Maybe it's because I don't use it as much, but I do use the box on very windy days. But also there's that time, like on windy days, where you have to get your voice out there. You have to be loud. Otherwise, he's not going to hear you. And like I said, there's situations like that as well, but just on like regular calm days like this, it's that soft yelps, cut a little bit, but don't get super loud. Just clucks, purrs and clucks, and your feeding calls. That right there is a very deadly combination. When you're not getting, you don't have to get super loud with it. And I have actually had gobblers when I've just been being quiet like that, 300 yards away, gobble at me before, where when I get real loud, they'll gobble, but they just hang up. They don't come in, but they come into that soft calling. But I encourage y'all to try this technique, see if it helps you. I guess that's about it. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Y'all be safe and God bless. Have a good one.